You reminded me exactly of a story, somebody very close to me in my life. Um, she went to a very elite prep school for high school,
Hmm.
very elite, very, very elite prep school. And she wrote a paper in like an English composition class. And in fact, this prep school, she was among the first class. It might have been this, she was the second class of women at this school. It previously been all men for decades, maybe 100 years. And so some of the male professors were not happy to see the women at all.
Mm.
They were very rough on them. But she wrote a paper, and the professor called her up and said, I have been here, I think it was 30 years, and I have given two A's on writing assignments in 30 years, and you are number three. This is excellent. Really praised her writing. Fast forward a year, she's now attending an Ivy League university. And she takes that same paper, she had a writing assignment, she takes that same paper and modifies it and tells the professor, hey, this is a second version of a paper I've written previously. That professor at the school, at the Ivy League school, gave her an F. And I said it was among the worst I've ever seen. I'm paraphrasing now. Hopefully, you don't fancy ever being a writer. This is really bad. And it just shattered her confidence, like that young man, for decades, shattered her confidence when it came to the written word.
Whoa.
She went through the process, what you're describing. She went through it intuitively. Today, she's a professional speaker, a coach, and a multi-published author.
Oh.
But but I'm going to ask you some questions going into it, but I wanted to relate this example first because it really hit home. I mean, she told me she was young, like this person, so she may have been 18 years old. And to
Yeah.
get gutted like that, cut off at the knees, said, this is terrible. You'll never be a good writer. First of all, who would do that? And
Mm.
secondly, it scarred her by her own admission. It rattled her confidence from teenage years probably until late 50s
Hmm.
is when she finally decided, no, I'm better than that. Who is this
Mm.
person, one person to define me and all that? So I would like to ask you some follow-on questions, Hortense, about mind traps. Um, I'd like you to, we've already, your analogy, your example and my example, but I would like to have you clarify even further for the audience, um, maybe a little bit more on a mind trap and how it can limit a leader's performance. I think we're all prone to
Mm.
inflict those upon ourselves, but especially have others inflict them upon us. I think it's a rare human being that hasn't
Mm.
faced someone that said, you're really terrible at that. You'll never do this. You can't do that. Why are you trying this? So any additional clarity on, mind traps and how they can limit a leader's performance?
The problem is when we are trapped ourselves, we understand that it affects the way we connect with yourself. This is a story you just shared with me, with this woman who, in fact, she is a writer, but she didn't authorize herself to do it because of a teacher. Same, with the CEO, So it affects the way you connect with yourself because you don't see yourself ready, or you don't authorize yourself to be really yourself. And then we understand that very well, that if it affects the way you connect with yourself, it affects the way you connect with others. Because empathy starts with yourself. So if you don't know who you are, if you are not able to listen to your voice, if you're not able to talk your own voice or write your own story, how can you be there for others? How can you understand others? How can you listen to others? No, you are too busy, trying to not being yourself. and
Yeah.
and then it affects who we are and what we are going to do when we are locked somewhere, and your behavior also after a time. Being locked somewhere and when you don't want to move, your behavior can also change, and you can become arrogant or angry or whatever. So it's because you are locked somewhere. So you have to have big look at that.
So am I correct in thinking and listening to you talk that the mind traps can come from two sources: internal, we can put them on ourselves, and then of course external, other people can say and do things to us that could cause us to limit our belief in ourselves. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is. But I think I found three families, but let's say two main family. The first one is a trauma, not overcome. So, something, I can come back to that in 1 second. And the second one is all the voices. So I agree with that, with what you say. The voices that the authority, community, social, for whatever around us, education, other voices that you hear in your life. And we are plenty of that. And especially today with, the social media, right? So we have plenty of that. You have to do that. No. So it makes us think we should do that. And then yes, it's self-inflicted, because also you don't listen to your voice, or you try to not listen. In my case, I knew, for example, but it's not that I didn't knew, but it was hard. I didn't know how to do it, and then you completely. I got stuck because I got sick because of that. So it's all. So yeah, it's all a process, but I would say two families. And trauma. So what I call a trauma. So if we go back to the example, I have a metaphor that I like to talk about trauma. Trauma, it's emotions that are not, at the right place in our brain. So imagine our brain as a house. So in your house, you have a bedroom, right? In your bedroom, you have your bed, right? So you put the furniture at the right place. In the living room, you have your sofa and things like that. Now imagine that in the middle of the living room, you have a car. So it's a bit complicated, because, if you have a car in the middle of your living room, so if you want, to watch TV, you cannot really watch TV. If you want to talk with your friends in the other sofa, it's complicated with, the car. So the car is the trauma. And then our job, in order to, to be okay in our living room, so okay with ourselves, is to put back, the car to the garage. So it goes to the garage. And how you do that, by doing this process, because the trauma is something, or it's an event, or a series of events would trigger high emotion in yourself, and also trigger your sense of safety. So, for example, the examples that we shared, both of us, it could be, another student would not listen, for example, or will forgot completely because it didn't trigger, emotion. But in that case, it did. So it's a trauma, and it's not overcome, because a trauma could be a very big trauma, as we know. So, something like the war, whatever, but also day-to-day traumas. And it exists. So long answer to answer your question. So yeah, two sources: voices, yes, and trauma.